Welcome, everyone. We are so glad that you're here tonight with us. Thank you for agreeing to spend your evening with us. But today we're sitting down with New Mexico State Senator Angel Charley to talk about her journey from advocate to elected leader. But before we get into our conversation, I just want to give a little bit of background about myself and properly introduce Advance and what we do. So my name is Lexy Locklear. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a member of the Lumbee tribe, and I'm from North Carolina, currently in Raleigh. Before I properly introduce our guest, I'd love to share a little bit of background about Advance and what we do here. So Advance Native Political Leadership, or simply Advance by our friends, is the first and only national Native-led organization. We're dedicated to building political power within Native communities. We take a holistic approach, cultivating an ecosystem built around leadership recruitment, civic engagement, data and research, as well as national coordination. We believe that when Native peoples have access to national networks, innovative organizing tools, strong voter engagement strategies, and clear pathways to leadership, our communities not only grow stronger, but also healthier and more resilient. Native political engagement has long been constrained by historical, legal, and modern barriers, and this is especially true for Native women. As a result, Native people remain drastically underrepresented in every level of government. To highlight that, this new series that we're doing is specifically on women in leadership. So, central to our work is the Native Leadership Institute Advances Training Program designed by and for Indigenous folks. The NLI offers a culturally grounded, cohort-based experience for Native leaders who are ready to seek elected office. Through an intensive multi-day training, participants build practical skills to run successful campaigns, all rooted in shared Indigenous cultural values. And Senator Charley is actually an alumni of that program. Here at Advance, we're committed to leadership development, community connection, and elevating the visibility of Native leaders across the country. So, like I said, Senator Angel Charley is a Native lawmaker, mother, and lifelong advocate for survivors of violence. She's a citizen of the Pueblo of Laguna with Diné and Zuni heritage. She spent her career advancing justice for Indigenous women and communities. Before her 2024 election, she led the Coalition to Stop Violence Against Native Women and also IllumiNative, driving policy change and shifting public narratives around safety, sovereignty, and healing. In the Senate, she champions environmental justice, tribal rights, and public health, securing wins like the Turquoise Alert system for missing Indigenous people and new protections for the cultural expression. Her work centers survivors and uplifts community-led solutions to generational harm. Thank you, Senator Charley, for agreeing to be with us tonight. I'm so excited to hear a little bit more about your journey and what brought you to serve in elected office.
Hey, Lexi. So good to be here with you. Thank you for that beautiful introduction. And yeah, I don't know if I'll ever get used to hearing Senator Charley. Like I'm Angel, I'm a village girl. So you hear Senator Charley, and I still take a step back and think, wow. Um, yeah, so I'm a mom, I'm an auntie, I'm a wife, I'm a daughter. I'm all of the things that a lot of Native women are, and I happen to be a state senator, the first to represent Senate District 30, the first Native person and the first woman. So I stepped into this role and really made the decision to run knowing that we had never had this kind of representation before. And what does that mean? What kind of responsibility does that hold? And I'm just so happy to be here with you tonight. Yeah.
Yeah, so to start off, could you just share a little bit about your journey with us? You mentioned that you are the first Native woman to represent your district, and what an amazing feat. But what first inspired you to step into leadership and eventually run for that office?
Yeah, it's a great question. I was reflecting on my professional journey recently, and I was thinking about everywhere that I've worked, I somehow became a leader in an organization, in a company, now in this role. And I think it comes from my leadership style, which is inclusive. It's like, how do we get more voices in here? How do we get more experiences in here? And then I think people begin to naturally trust you and want to follow where you're going, the ideas that you have. That being said, I had no intention in running for office. I was never one of those. I've met other politicians now who are like, this is what I want to do. This is it. I've dreamt about this. And I'm like, wow, to get to like achieve your dream, this wasn't my dream, you know? But what I will say is when my husband and I moved home, we moved back to the res kind of during the pandemic because we were all working remotely and you could. So we were like, if we're going to live anywhere in the world, let's go home and do it and, you know, see where that takes us. And then in moving home, it was like, well, here's this seat that's opened up. It was an open seat. And I started to get phone calls. You should think about doing this. Are you interested in doing this? And I was like, yeah, sure, maybe, you know, it's interesting. I'll think about it. But then Senator Heinrich, which is one of our US senators, called me and said, you know, I really think you should do this. He was probably like the highest ranking public elected that called. And I got nervous. So I told him, yes, I will think about it. He said, well, how long do you need? And I said, about a month. And he said, okay, I'll call you back in a month. Well, he called back in a month. I was like, okay, well, you know, that's over. And he called back in a month and he said, have you made your decision? And I had said, you know, I had needed time to think about it, talk to my family. And I said, yes. And before I could even realize the commitment that I had just made, he was like, great, I'm sending you a campaign contribution right now. Before I even had a campaign account set up, you know, all of these things. So um, it was interesting. In that time, though, before I actually had run for office, I had taken advances. I had been part of one of the earliest cohorts that you all had because there's a lot to running for office that I think people don't really understand the technicalities behind it. And I wanted to know if I was interested in doing this, what would it actually take to run a campaign? What would it actually take to be in office? What are the things that I have to think about? Because I wasn't exposed to this world, you know? So many of us don't know elected officials in our everyday lives and in our homes and communities. So there wasn't a lot of people that I could call and ask, you know, how does this work? What am I thinking about getting myself into? And that was a really helpful experience for me.
The idea that you didn't want to run for office, but someone else like nominated you, that seems to be a common thing that we see with a lot of Native folks who begin campaigns for the first time. Um, was there like a defining moment in that journey where you were like, okay, I think I'm ready, or I know I'm ready to do this?
There were series of moments where things were aligning without a lot of effort, stress, pressure, and I just kept, we pray, right? I would go and I would pray and I would ask for guidance. And then something would loosen or let go. And it was like, oh, okay, here we go. You know, we would hit a target for raising money, or we would have people actually showing up to the events and getting involved and wanting to volunteer. Um, so it was never a moment where one, I said I was ready to do this, but I just felt like I was getting little clues from, you know, beyond me to say, you're doing the right thing, you're on the right track. And so I still trust that feeling. Um, and really leaned into my intuition. You know, does this feel right? And what's what I'm doing feel right? Because you know in your own body when something feels like it's tough and you're fighting against um, you know, what you would trust and where you would naturally go yourself. So not necessarily a helpful answer, but yeah, not a moment, just a series of little things.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful and really speaks to like the way that you know yourself and your family and your support system and like knowing that not only that you're signing up for yourself, but your family's going to be there with you. So the fact that you're leaning on your own intuition is just beautiful. Um, we're going to switch a little bit more of our questions about the practicality or leading in real time. You've now, sorry, someone just knocked at the door and my dog is going crazy.
I love Alive. It's so fun.
That was unexpected. He usually is not a barker, but okay. Okay, I think he's fine. Um,
What's your dog's name?
his name's Avon. If you've ever watched The Wire, one of the best HBO shows of all time, one of the characters in there was Avon Barksdale. And the first time I ever watched that show, I said, if I ever have a dog, I'm naming him that. So
Very cute. My
thank you.
association goes automatically to the like products.
Yeah, the beauty
Yeah,
brand.
yeah, the beauty brand.
Yeah.
Love it.
Um, okay, so leading in real time, you've now completed your first year in office. First, congratulations. That is such a milestone moment.
We got to make space for Avon. Avon wants to be heard. We're gonna roll with it. Come on, Avon. We're here for it.
Okay. You've now completed your first year in office. Congratulations. Such a milestone moment. When you think back to that transition from campaigning to actually serving in office, what has been that most surprising or challenging shift for you?
I remember distinctly the moment, right? So you throw a little get together for your campaign volunteers and folks who've just helped out along the way to say thank you. And so we had a little gathering actually out on my res at our casino. And my campaign manager called. She's watching all of the precincts come in, the results, and she called and said, "You won." And it was a moment I got to have all to myself, which was really nice because I was in a room with people. So I stepped out, I had the phone call, it was just my daughter and I started crying, and it was a huge moment. I remember having this feeling in the pit of my stomach, like, oh my God, we won. What now? Right? Because everything I had prepared for was the run for office, and there's so much adrenaline, and you're just like laser focused on campaigning for office. And so the moment I found out that I won, I remember having this like, oh my God, what now? What do you how do you do this? How do you actually do this role? And so nothing I think about it comes naturally, but I think the one thing that I have reflected on is my background was in social justice organizing, in advocacy work. And more often than not, I was holding the system, government accountable and calling out inequities, calling out um, underfunding, all of these things. And I had to separate for myself in my journey this this want to be like fiercely protective of what I'm involved in because I don't step into anything lightly. And when I become involved with a organization or a board, I take it seriously. I'm doing it all the way. And there was like a disconnect between like I've done nothing but kind of hold the government accountable, call them out, and now I am the government. Like how do I reconcile these two things? And it was another legislator who had said this during an interim committee. She said, I don't trust the government to do these things. And when she said that, it felt liberating for me because I hadn't quite figured out how to tease these things apart. Right now, I'm government, I'm in government, and I represent that, and I'm the face of this thing. And so when she said that, it just like hit me, felt really liberating. And then I started to think, okay, well, I can still not trust the government, do this role, and be fiercely protective of the people that I represent. So I'm not fiercely protective of the government. I'm fiercely protective of my district. I'm fiercely protective of the communities that I serve, all of the people whose stories I carry with me to the legislature. And that has been like the one thing in the background that I have that's made me feel good about I'm like moving my integrity still, so I feel good about that little lesson.
That is Beautiful. Thank you. You mentioned this a little bit earlier, but your work in social justice has shaped your journey a lot. And as someone who's worked in DV and sexual assault advocacy myself, I deeply admire that work that you did as executive director of the Coalition to Stop Violence Against Native Women. I'd love to hear more about how your experience leading in advocacy shaped the way you approach leadership now. You spoke about this a little bit more, but if we could just like dig a little bit deeper, that work isn't something that you just stop doing one day. How do you, or are there lessons from your time in advocacy that you still use today to guide your decisions as a lawmaker? How has that shaped you being an elected official?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I appreciate it so much. We did policy advocacy at the coalition, right? And so it was building relationships, long-term strategy, short-term tactics. How do we actually make change? Can we push some legislation forward? But I will say, being on this side, I'm like, I will run a bill. I'll run a bill and run legislation, and we'll do it. And so, yes, we passed the Turquoise Alert, and I think we'll talk a little bit about that later. But this last session, so I've been in for a year. I've had two sessions, two regular sessions now, a couple of special sessions. Uh, and this last session, I was able to pass the elimination of statute of limitations for the state of New Mexico for first and second degree criminal sexual penetration and criminal sexual contact of a minor, which we had 6 month statute of limitations, some of the shortest in the country. And I had already known if I win this seat, this is one of the things that I want to get done. This is going to be a goal of mine going in. And we just had a budget session. So it was 30 days, which is a really intense, everything should be focused on the budget. But if you get a message from the governor, you can win some other things for it. Lexi, I went back to the coalition and I said, look, I want to do this, but it has to be rooted in survivors' experiences and survivor stories. And like, we need to make sure that this is something that is coming from community and not from government as a solution. Is this needed? And I had known that, right, as the executive director of this organization working with sexual violence survivors for nearly a decade. But we did a listening session, we did a messaging session, uh, and I took those, I facilitated that, took that with me, and that was the framework that I pushed the legislation forward. All of the messaging, all of the testimony prep that we did, and stuck to this is survivor-led policy. And so, I mean, I would just go back to the first thing that I originally said, which is that, you know, policies should be always centering the people who are most directly impacted. And this is, I mean, I only have two sessions under my belt, but this is something that I'm extremely proud of. The way that we moved and navigated our way through, the way that we ensured that it was rooted in survivor experiences. When we passed every committee along the way, I recall people who had testified and just let them know. And uh, we now have one of the best statute of limitations for first and second degree criminal sexual violence in the country.
Congratulations. Hearing that story gave me goosebumps a little bit. Survivor stories are always so impactful, and it's great that you're putting them on the forefront of such an important bill. Um, you, the relationship of going back to community seems to be something that you do in all of your like everything that you do, specifically social media. We've noticed in advance that social media has become a powerful tool for public officials to stay engaged with their community, but not also stay engaged. It's like to educate folks on civic engagement, get people involved in civic life. And you've built a really strong and intentional presence this past year while you've been in office. Beyond just sharing updates to folks, how are you using your platforms to lead, engage, and stay connected with your community? And why is that approach so important to you?
Yeah, well, I represent a super rural district. So it's about 6,000 square miles of New Mexico. It goes from the state line all the way to the middle of the state, outskirts of Albuquerque. So if you're familiar with New Mexico, it's Zuni Pueblo all the way to Isleta Pueblo and Acoma, Laguna, and Alamo in between, and a little bit of Los Lunas and Belen. But it's rural. And so there are newspapers that are shutting down in rural New Mexico, probably around the country too. And so it's like, how do we reach people where they are is part of the strategy. But I also follow this ethos of policy is downstream from um, culture, culture shifting. And social media is a tool in which we can tap into current culture trends and begin having a conversation about these things. I mean, like the Barbie movie is a great example of this, right? Where people can go and watch a movie and it's got an entertainment value, but there's so many layered pieces of education and advocacy within that movie. And so it's like doing that on a micro level through social media. So you'll catch me doing a trend or doing something a little silly on there, but it's always in service of a policy or forward advancement for rural communities. And a lot of that understanding comes from one working at the coalition, and understanding how important storytelling is to changing hearts and minds. And then you layer in the experience that I had with IllumiNative, where it was all narrative change work that really helped me to define that focus, that ethos on policy is downstream from pop culture. So yeah, I'm intentional. I love it. It's just also fun. Like it's like one of the funnest things you get to do
Yeah.
about this job.
We often see you bringing folks along with you in your work, whether that be to session or you going to visit folks. Why do you play or why do you make a point to do that? And how do you decide who to bring into those spaces?
I just can't waste this kind of opportunity. I want more people to see what this actually is, that it's achievable and attainable for people like us. I grew up super poor and not always serious about school, not always serious about life, but then you can like take root and do really good things for your community. And so I mostly want to let people know it's possible, but also I'm representing a district in Santa Fe. I'm not up there as myself, and so I've really tried to take that part of this role really seriously is that I'm a voice. I'm a voice for the community. And so when I'm giving testimony or there is an issue that comes up for a vote or for debate, I'm calling community. Tell me about child separation because we're dealing with that in the Children, Youth, and Families Department right now. Climate change. What are you seeing? What stories can I convey up here for others to listen? Because, more often than not, we have people, we're all making decisions for one another's communities. And the best way that I can that I can fulfill this role is it's a responsibility to the people. And so the people should bear witness to the process.
A true public servant. Thank you for that service. We talked a little bit earlier about the Turquoise Alert law, but want to highlight it a little bit more since it was such a monumental passage. You played a key role in advancing that along with Representative Abeda. It's also known as Emily's Law, but it addresses a critical gap in how New Mexico responds to missing and endangered Native folks. Could you walk us through what it looked like to not only lead that, but to collaborate with your peers in office on this bill and what you learned through that process?
Yeah. So working at the coalition, I had done tons of MMIP advocacy, education, outreach, all of the things. And um, one of the things that families always shared in their stories was the lack of urgency that they felt coming from either law enforcement or the investigating agency. And in last year, my first session, the Indian Affairs Department, we have a cabinet level Indian Affairs Department in our state legislature. And they had come up with this idea and approached me for it and asked, do you think we should do this? And again, checked in with advocates. Is this something that we need? Is this something that we should push forward? Of course, I'm all in it, but I want to gut check these things with the people who are directly impacted. And there was wide support for it. And so we passed it through both chambers unanimously, I believe. It was one of those unique votes. Statute of limitations was the same, where, if we're protecting the most vulnerable among us, we're protecting everyone. And I think it really resonated with people that this is something that could have a positive impact, that could really make a difference. Because when, someone goes missing and we need resources, this is just one of the easiest ways to tap into a system that already exists and to move it forward. That being said, Lexi, I will say, like, implementation, passing a law is one thing, implementation is a whole nother thing. And so we passed that last year, and in the year that it has been functioning, we have learned, what are some of the gaps, what are some of the loops that we need to close. And so this past year, we passed a $1.2 million investment to the Department of Public Safety here in New Mexico to upgrade their system so they have a better tracking mechanism by which that they can operate. But there's still some disconnect out here. And so I'm still in conversations about this piece of legislation and how may need to go back and change things. How do we strengthen it? How do we turn this more into an enforcement tool as like we intended it to be? And so I think that's probably the one of the most not, it's not surprising because I worked in policy advocacy, but not having a paid legislature. We're the only state in the entire nation that has an unsalaried legislature. So, like, how often can we actually work on implementation of the laws that we pass if we can't do this work full time or even part time for that matter? But yeah.
Thank you. Um, as an alumni of Advance's early Native Leadership Institute programs, one, we are so proud of you and your journey and the growth you've experienced through that time. And it has been awesome to witness that growth in real time. How would you say that your leadership has evolved since your time in NLI?
Oh, I mean, I went to a leadership cohort that you all put together at the beginning of last year. And I don't know where the words found me, but I was like, have the audacity, be audacious, be that one. And so I've really tried to step into that, be that one, say the thing, who else is going to say it? And so I am getting very comfortable in my stance, in my position, and, even still calling out and calling in what needs to be said um, in this new position of power. I mean, this is the place to do it. This is the place to say it. And so it's really embracing that opportunity. It's an opportunity to kind of sit in these positions and do this stuff, do this work.
Was there a lesson or skill from your NLI training that you've had to lean on most during your campaigning or your first year in office?
During campaigning, for sure. I mean, I think there's if you're thinking about running for office, you have to be real. You need to raise money to do it. And there's a lot of unpacking we have to do about raising money. In my primary, I had to raise about 140,000, I think. And then I didn't have a general opponent. Had I would have had to raise in total nearly $300,000 to run for this office, right? It takes money to do this. And so you just got to be comfortable making the ask and unpacking some of that, whatever trauma we have around money and finances, especially if you grew up in a family like I did, where we didn't have disposable income. And so that was, I mean, I remember going back, you get a notebook when you're in the leadership program and you can kind of take some of the lessons. I would go back often in that workbook and reread some of those lessons. I was doing all of the right things, but it was nice to have something tangible to help guide you along. Because if you're running for office and you hadn't been through something and there's not a reference point for you, I would imagine that would feel really big, really hard to navigate this. But the program really leaned in on the strength. And then I think the other thing that was like has carried through from running for office to being in office is being unapologetic about who you are, about how you're going to do this. And you go through this practice with NLA where you develop your stump speech, and you got to get to the core of what you want to say about yourself, and you got to do it fast, and you got to be engaging. And it's a great tool that has carried forward because, you're constantly in elevator speech. Elevator speech world in in Santa Fe. Gotta say it, you gotta say it quick.
And for folks who are interested in NLI, the stump speech part that Senator Charley was talking about, we still do that, and we record them when you do them, so you're able to like keep them and notice your growth from when you first do your stump speech to when you're in office one day. Um, yeah, that. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Um, so moving on a little bit, as you look forward to your next year as a state senator, what are you most focused on or hoping to accomplish in session?
I am really interested in bigger environmental protections, really kind of getting into this lane. And I'm thinking about community benefit agreements, if industry is going to come into a community and develop whatever technology it is, how can we steward investment for quality of life in that community? I'm also really interested in updating the State Tribal Collaboration Act in New Mexico. We have one of the best ones. It's kind of like the boilerplate that other states I think look to because it's been in effect for so long and as a result of Native people being in these positions. And we can make it better. We have had about 15 years of working within this framework to know what's not working. And I would love to get in there and just strengthen tribal sovereignty, relationships, and respect for tribal governments through state government.
We're excited to see your journey next year and all that you get to accomplish. Um, with all of your expertise, what advice or guidance do you hope to pass on to emerging Native women leaders as they step into new roles of leadership, whether that be in advocacy or in elected office?
Just because it was so freeing for me, it's like these are the audacious things that like you can and should do. Be audacious. Be your ancestors' wildest dream. Get out there, put yourself out there, talk kindly to yourself because that matters more than anything else you'll hear. And you'll hear some mean things out there. Talk kindly to yourself. And I think the biggest piece of advice, and it's not just for people who are running for office, but I often ask myself when I need to take a breath, I need to take a moment in, positive or negative, what would my ancestors say to me? And whenever I ask myself that question, whether it's I've passed this amazing bill, holy crap, I can't believe we did it, or this person is hating on me on social media right now. Are they, is this, you start to get imposter syndrome. It really is okay, what would my ancestors say to me? And more often than not, it's my grandma Josephine who shows up shows up for me. And she speaks to me with love and encouragement. And it has just been one of the best like ways for me to stay grounded and also speak kindly to myself ultimately. So yeah, do it. Y'all just do it. I will be your biggest fan. Add me on social media. I will follow you. Let's do this.
Thank you so much for your experience, for your journey, and for being audaciously you. We love to watch you on social media, and it's just so awesome to see the impact that you're having in real time. And we are so thankful to have you as a part of the dance community. That was
Yeah.
it for all of my more focused questions, but we have a segment where we have some true or false questions to ask you. If you get 6 out of 10 of these right, I think it's 6 out of 10. Yeah, 6 out of 10 of these correct, we'll send you a little gift that I have here.
Okay,
And if not, oh well, we still love you and we're not going to judge you. Okay,
let's
are
go.
you ready?
Yeah,
Okay. Number one, the state flower of New Mexico is the desert marigold.
false.
False. It is the yucca flower.
Yeah.
Number two, the University of Hawaii's Rainbow Warriors mascot name was inspired by a rainbow that appeared over a football game in the early 1900s.
So I don't know, but I'm gonna say true.
You're right. That's
Okay.
true.
That sounds true. Yeah.
Okay. The annual Santa Fe Indian Market draws around 150 visitors each year.
False. 150 visitors?
Or 150,000. Sorry.
Okay,
150,000.
okay,
That was me.
okay. Okay, well, then 150,000, I will say that's true. But 150, I was like, no, where have you
Yes,
been?
true. The Indian market draws over 1,000 native artists from hundreds of tribes and attracts roughly 150,000 visitors over the weekend. It's
Yeah.
been running since 1922, and it makes it one of the oldest and most celebrated native arts events on the planet. So, super interesting. Number four, the primary ingredient in green chili is a green bell pepper.
A green belt. Oh God, if I this is gonna go on like campaign anti if I get this wrong. A green bell pepper. False. No, true. I'm gonna say true. False.
False.
Okay.
I'll give you false. It was the first answer. It's a hatch chili.
Okay. Yeah, and it's about yeah, okay. Okay.
Okay.
Oh God.
Pueblo pot Number five, Pueblo pottery is commonly made with the use of a pottery wheel.
No. False.
False.
Yeah,
Commonly made with the coil and pinch method.
that's right.
Number six, Cloudcroft, New Mexico is the highest city in elevation in the US.
No, that's false.
It's true.
No.
Yeah,
Are you right in the US?
in the US.
Cloudcroft, New Mexico?
Yep.
It's higher than like I don't any of the mountains?
Apparently the highest city. So the highest
Oh, the
like
highest.
city.
It's
Yes,
higher than Denver?
that's what it says online.
Okay.
I mean, if I'm wrong, please let me know and we'll change it. But double checked it and apparently it's true. I was surprised by that too.
Yeah. Got me. Good one.
Okay. Number seven. New Mexico has reported around 600 UFO sightings
Since when?
since
In history?
in history.
I'm gonna say true, but I feel like it could be way more than that.
It's false. It's a little more over than 1,100. But I think
Yeah.
the actual number is like 1,142.
Side note, it's like a life goal of mine to see a UFO. I'm on a mission. I don't know how you do it. I think you have to be alone in a car at night driving down a really abandoned road, which I don't find like I don't do that.
It doesn't sound really fun. But have
Yeah,
you been
but
to
I
the International UFO Museum?
years ago. I mean, like 20 years ago or something. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's on my list. I want to go one day.
Let me know if you come. Maybe I'll meet you down there.
Okay. Number eight, the stretch of the stretch of Route 66 through New Mexico was the very last section of the entire highway to be fully paved.
The last, like on the way it's either on the way from California or on the way to Chicago. Oh, I'm gonna say true.
False. It's actually Arizona.
And we're coming up to the 100-year anniversary, so I should probably brush up on my Route 66 facts.
Okay. Number nine, New Mexico is the only U.S. state with an official question. So there's a state question in New Mexico.
I'm gonna say yes. That's true.
Yes.
Is okay.
And the question is red or green.
That is not what I thought the question was. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
that sounds like our question. Yep.
which is your preferred, red or green chili?
I like them at different times of the year. So, and different times of the day too, which is like if I, okay. So I like red in the winter. It just feels like stews and savory. And I like green in the summer, warmer months. But I also like red on everything breakfast and then green on everything lunch, dinner.
Our executive director took our team to Acapulco Pueblo, and I got to
Uh-huh.
try some red mutton stew for the first time, and it was amazing. So next time I go, I'm trying to track down some more red sauce. I'm just like obsessed with it now.
Yeah, so good. So did we meet at that time? My husband is from we live in Acoma. So Anathea and my husband are cousins. And so I think the whole group came to Anathea's grandma's
Yeah.
house, which is also my
Yes.
husband's grandmother's house. Yeah. Okay, that's right. That's right. But yeah, red or green, that totally makes sense.
Okay. Last question. Um, Albuquerque's International Balloon Fiesta is the largest hot air balloon festival in the world.
I think that's false. I think Turkey's is bigger than ours.
That's true.
Is that it's true. Did I get it wrong?
No, you got it right.
Oh, you got it right.
Turkey
Okay.
is just a
Yeah.
little bit bigger.
That's what I thought. That's what I
Yeah.
thought. Okay.
Okay,
Well, how'd
let's
I
go
do?
through. You got two, you got six. You did good.
I just made it, Lexi. I'll take it. I will take a win anytime I can get a win.
Thank you so much for playing and thank you so much for being with us tonight. It has been awesome to learn a little bit more about you and your journey to elected office. We're so proud of you again and love watching you on social media, so keep it up. And for folks who are watching, please go follow Senator Angel Charley on Instagram. What other socials are you on mostly? I think you're mostly on
Uh,
Instagram and TikTok.
yeah, those two. I actually just had a conversation yesterday about needing to get into my Facebook, and that exists too, and beefing it up. I'm ignoring that one, but all of them at Angel Charley.
Thank you so much. Any last words for our folks before we leave?
Yeah, thank you all for anybody who tuned in and watched. And thank you, Lexi, for spending the afternoon with me. It was fun. That true or false was fun. So yeah, glad we did it.
Course. And for folks listening, if this conversation has inspired you to learn more about how you can be the change in your community, we would love to talk with you. You can learn more about the Native Leadership Institute and our leadership training by checking out our website, advancednativepl.org, and be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or X for more information and events coming your way. Y'all have a great night, and thank you for showing up for your community.
Thank you.